Thank you for staying with us on Core Digest today. We are looking at President Buhari's 3 years in office, and we're assessing the All Progressives Congress's performance. This government is hinged on a tripod, three basic issues that the administration set out to tackle and fix. Talk about security, talk about boosting the economy, and then talk about fighting corruption. How do we say this administration has fared in these three broad issues? That's what we will be looking at on the show today. We have Okenan Abidu, a legal practitioner, and Abiodun Shomi, a public affairs analyst, in the studio. Thank you for joining us today.
It's my pleasure.
All right. How are we faring?
Within the last 1 year, or within the past few years, we've seen attempts at fighting corruption in a way that has never been unprecedented. And most of those ones had to do with the invasion of the judges' houses, and then it looked as though the judges were taken as sacred, but with this administration invasion of the judges, some people understood it as a sacrilege.
And it's an invasion. I think it was not called a sting operation.
Sting operation or whatever. But time has come to grind the wheel of justice over and over again, and some of those cases have been thrown out of court. And if you want to make a personal assessment, you know what that means. Fighting corruption also led us to see some whistleblowing activities, and then how some of those situations were taken care of, and then how the present Minister for Finance read out figures of how much has been paid to whistleblowers.
Yeah, about corruption, we still have a major problem in that sector, because I personally don't think whistleblowing policy would address it all, because at the end of the day, we should not forget that many people want to take advantage of it and give so many false information to security services, wasting people's time. So you'll be shocked that we are not developing the infrastructure, to cope with the demands of criminal justice system. So that is why I personally felt maybe we won't be making much impact in that area. But in relation to whistleblowing, but that does not mean we have not made some gains in terms of anti-corruption, because many people are now very conscious, particularly politicians, that they are under watch. So that is the game on its own.
Okay, so looking more broadly at corruption, a number of people have tagged it as being lopsided, that it's only those who are in the opposition that are being tried for corruption. How true is that, or how false is it? Okay.
Yes, let one of those who are making such allegations come and tell us that even though it is the opposition that has been accused of being hounded in prisons or police cells and so on, let them tell that is there not a cause. That is on one side. Then on the other side too, everyone sees it as lopsided. It is truly lopsided. There are people who are in the president's cabinet who have baggages of corruption issues, not until the regime came on board and they were swept under the carpet. But I can tell you, the principle of law is this: crime does not run against the state.
You've mentioned that we're seeing results, but we're not there yet. What about the speed with which we respond to these issues of corruption?
Yeah, it's quite very worrying, particularly if you view it against the background of the fact that this administration, is crusading against anti-corruption. One would have expected some cases like the case of Babeche Lawal, which we are yet to have a closure to, would have been speedily investigated and decisions taken on whether to prosecute or not. So also when you look at Miner's case is so scandalous that I could not believe that it happened. That tells you and reminds people that on one part you can have Buhari who wants to fight against corruption, then on the other part do you have the hate to support him, in that process, because it depends on the information being given to the president and he will take a viewpoint from it. But the case of Minor is so scandalous because we are talking about a man alleged to have tampered with the pension of police officers. And that is a serious matter, particularly the well-being of those who are ensuring our security. And the man came back, he was reinstated somehow from media reports, and he came back into the country despite the fact that he was declared wanted. And again, he slipped out, and no one knows where he is currently. Minor has not been arraigned. We are not sure investigations have been carried out.
Now, you mentioned the issue of
one.
aids, that it's also about the information that the aids make available to the president. So if it's seeming that the president isn't getting value for the money being paid to the aids, that the government is paying to the aids, then what should we do about them?
Yeah, but you have the SAGI Presidential Advisory Committee that could have provided alternative information also. Like my colleague said, the impression being created in the minds of the public is that corruption is one way, depending on who is in power. The situation we have in the country is so complex that even if you want to fight corruption, you are seeking to be elected. Where are you going to get the money? You get the same billions, from. We have monetized the whole political system. You get the billions from those who have held political offices in the past. How many genuine businessmen in Nigeria today will pump 5, 10, 20 billion into an election without bankrupting their industry? How many of them?
Gentlemen, let's talk economy.
Economy is proven to be tough for APC regime to manage. Not necessarily because of what they met on ground, but because of the signals they sent out immediately upon resumption or assumption of office. When the present regime came on board, President Buhari was making unguarded statements about Nigeria, his country, and about the regime that handed over power to him.
Unguarded.
He got some foreign investors worried. But if you can say this much about Nigeria, you remember the time that he was attacked by Nigerians, that he went outside the country and was calling everybody corrupt. And Nigerians didn't take it lightly. Neither did he. Was punished for it, not by Nigerians, but by the way foreign investors moved their money out of this country, and that spiraled into this fall for Naira.
Was it saying the truth or not?
Even if I was saying the truth, it was not politically correct. It was not economically correct. And if that is true, if you say such about your country, what are you encouraging? Tell me one country where there is no corruption. Corruption will never end because another regime will take over. By this time next year, God keeping us alive, we'll be talking about either he reading the May 29 speech or another person taking over for him.
In the first instance, what cannot be denied is that we have been able to sustain, the development in the agricultural sector in terms of increased production of food crops within the country. Now we are increasingly, getting sufficient in rice production, and not really referring to what the government is saying, but what people can see. We now have people embracing local brands like Ofada. We've seen what has been done in the east, in the north, and in the west, Ogun State, for instance. So there is certainly some progress being made in that area. In the areas of production, animal production, we've seen substantial leap in poultry production, to the point that we've not been able to cope with the demands of the school meal program of the federal government, which is another plus for that regime. That has led to serious acute shortage of eggs in the country, which people are. So eventually, people are hoping that would also lead to increase in production. When you take away agriculture and you then look at other sectors, well, it depends on how you want to measure it. Do you measure development using fiscal policy, or do you use the Human Development Index? If you use the HDI index, I think we have serious problems. If you use the fiscal policy, which is about the implementations of policies like devaluation of Naira, which in any case has worsened the situation, it only works for countries where they are really engaging in industrial production, engaging in exporting goods. It does not work for countries consuming those goods. So we made those mistakes, and for me, we went back to 1986, in terms of economic policies which we are introducing. Go and look at the central pillars of those policies. They're exactly the same policies of 1986. So you'll ask yourself, does it mean that we don't have new thinking? Does it mean that our economy has expanded? The structure of the economy has not changed? Does it mean that we don't even have more population or what? Let me give you an example. For instance, the valuation of Naira, it was an IMF conditionality in 1986. The valuation of Naira, commercialization, privatization of the commanding heights of the economy, and then deregulation of the oil sector. So go into it. Those are exactly what we are doing now since 1986. So for me, I am not too comfortable with those measures because we knew by 1986 when Professor Sam Cookie's commission sat and collated the views of Nigerians. We know that it will lead to the kind of untold hardships which we have currently. Now, we have a situation of high unemployment rate in the country. We have poverty. Even though over the years we've moved away from extreme poverty, acute poverty, to poverty situation, but the fact of the matter is majority of our people are still living in poverty. These problems are not caused by Buhari alone.
Okay.
These are built up over the years, from the military rule to civilian rule. But he has the responsibility to resolve many of these issues currently.
Let's quickly touch on security. How are we faring?
It's quite unfortunate that, you see, no matter how you want to look at it, government, I continue to say, is a continuum. And the problem you solved during your tenure may not be the problem I solved during my own tenure. When it was under...
is it possible to solve all the problems?
That is why you are put it into power.
Okay, to solve all. To solve all, right?
Yeah, to solve problems.
Okay.
At least the one you meet on ground, and you also create the ones that successive regimes would solve. Because when the previous regime was here, we were having bombs, littering the Federal Capital Territory. It even got to the point that in Nigeria here, the UN office was bombed. It was the height of it all. And you remember the Nyanya bombing, you remember the Christmas Day bombing somewhere in Zuba, and all those. The government then was able to contain it to that extent. It never happened around them. But they now shifted to Sambisa and then those Bama and most of those pockets of places. And we had it on record that some more than 20 local governments was under the control of Boko Haram. Almost immediately when this administration came on board. They've been banning figures around that there is no longer any local government, any territory of Nigeria where they are holding hostage. But Boko Haram themselves changed their tactics, or so it seemed, that the herdsmen were now being protected by a militia group or insurgents or terrorists. The federal government, the Nigerian army, has not come up with intelligence report about the mystery gunmen that have always been involved in attacks. It got down to almost southeast, somewhere in Enugu State, where some communities were raided overnight and then were overrun and women killed, villages ransacked. It got to west, when it also affected the former presidential aspirant Olufalaye's front and so on. And presently it is Benue State. Now, in that aspect, what Jonathan solved wasn't those herdsmen attacks. The issue the challenge that came when he was on power was quite different, but it was insecurity. Now, the present regime is in power and they have to face this one. But we've not been seeing intelligence approach to solving those problems.
Let's come to you, Piotr, security-wise.
Security, it's a mixed thing. One, the Boko Haram capacity to occupy local governments on a sustained basis has been degraded, badly degraded to the point that, like my colleague said, they had to change tactics. Well, that changing tactics is not the problem. That's the nature of guerrilla warfare, insurgency. They will always mutate. When you think you solve one problem, then you see them, coming out in another form. We've never being used to fighting guerrilla warfare. So our military is still trying to learn from it and then, respond appropriately. When you look at what happened in Zaria with the Shiite killing, that should never have happened in any country in the whole world, whether under military or civilian. That should never.
Now, which aspect of it? The procession by the Shiite, the confrontation between them and the military, or the killings?
It's the killings. Look, procession takes place in different parts of the country from time to time. No doubt about it. You see people on the streets, on Christmas Day, you see Christians carry the Palm Sunday and all that. You have the traditional people doing their things, when is their annual festival. You have the Muslims also doing their thing when it's their own time. What is not acceptable is to say because they block the road and then, I don't want to use amnesty figure of over 800 people shot dead within 2 days. I want to go with the Kaduna State Government report, which is saying about 350 people, were shot dead. These are Nigerians, not goats. Over what? For obstructing traffic. Because the chief of army staff is coming. That to me should never have happened. It was, for me, the lowest point in terms of the issue of security, because that has again generated a new problem for the country. Apart from the Zaria issue,
yes,
we made huge progress in the northeast in terms of Boko Haram. We have other forms of crime like kidnapping and the Badu problem. Largely, government has been able to stand down the Badu issue successfully. Kidnapping is going down, particularly with the arrest of the billionaire kidnapper Evans, who is now being processed through the criminal justice system.
You, as a person, as a Nigerian, as a public affairs analyst, how would you score the government security-wise? I want to take notes so I can ask you questions later. Security-wise,
to be honest, I would rather give them 50%.
50. What about an economy?
On economy, I think they've done very well in agriculture. I will give them 55%.
55. What about an corruption fight?
On corruption, still the same usual problem. I will be talking about 40%.
40. Let's come to security.
Security, I'll give them 60%.
Oh. Economy.
Economy, I'll give them 45.
45. And then corruption?
I'll give them 35.
35. Okay, so you really concentrated on security. All right. The purpose of this is just to ensure that, we are supposed to keep the government accountable to the people, ask questions, let the government respond, and let's achieve a system that works. I must really appreciate you gentlemen for being a part of the program today. Okay, Nanabidu, a legal practitioner, and Bildon Shomi, a public affairs analyst. Thank you for coming around.
Thank you, Nigerians.